In part 4 of this series, we will be using modular assets to build a level for our character controller to traverse. Also, we'll be looking at setting up our camera for gameplay. So in game development, we normally use, well, unless you're doing a 2D game, we use 3D models, which consist of meshes, textures, materials, animations, all those sorts of things. You can make your own models using various like 3D software modeling programs like Blender, Maya, Max, and it's a whole bunch of others. But for this example, we're going to be using an asset pack, which is made by someone called Kenny. So we can actually download this for free. So in Google, we can just type in Kenny game assets, and you can go to his website. And in this example, we're going to be using his 3D platformer kit here, platformer kit. And he has a whole bunch of others. I mean, like, yeah, there's a lot you can do, and a lot of almost all of these are free. But let's just click on platformer kit here, and we can just hit download. You can see these are all the assets it contains. If we just hit download and just pop it in your downloads, save the file. Okay, and then you go to wherever it was downloaded. Yeah, don't need that anymore. And then we can extract this zip here. Oh, I just click extract here. Extract here. Okay, so it contains a whole lot of information, but all that we're really interested is in the models. We're going to take the FBX format and we're going to take that into Unity. So we're going to open up my first game in the assets folder and drag and drop the FBX format into the assets folder and just let that import. And then open up that folder, and you can see all of the assets in here. And if we take our block object and bring that, click that and drag that in, here we can see our, whoops, here we can see the block object. Now, this is where we have to start thinking about scale. So if we create a 3D object here, a cube, this is a cube. This is a one unit, one Unity unit. Now, depending on how you want to be working, you could say one unit is going to be 1 meter or 1 centimeter. And when you export your models, if you're creating models yourself, when you export your models, depending on what your units are, it will import differently. So what we can do is we can actually, we might want to say, okay, we want each of these blocks to be, we want our standard block to be 1 by 1 units. So it just, helps make everything relative and consistent. So, well, and all of these objects are going to be like that. It's pretty big. Like if you compare that to our player, that's a pretty big block. So let's bring this down a bit. So what we can actually do is we can select the arrow and shift and click all the way down there to select all of them, and change our scale factor to 0.1 and click apply. And then you'll see the block in the scene will actually shrink. There we go. So now it's 1/10 of the original size. So you might be in a position where your scene kind of looks dark, a bit dark like this. Now, it could have something to do with your directional light. Maybe it's not bright enough, but big part of it, or it could be because your lighting is not hasn't been baked or generated. So if we go into Window and we go to Rendering, Light Settings, and we click Generate Lighting, you can see down here it'll prepare to bake, and then bam, it's built all the lighting. This is so what Unity will do is for static objects that aren't going to be moving, it will pre-calculate how bright it should be, where the shadows should be, and then it saves all that, so it's not having to do that in real time. And you can tick auto generate. Every time you make a change to an object, it will recalculate the lighting. For what we're doing is quite a simple game, so it's not going to be too difficult for the computer to keep rebuilding the lighting. If you were working with something a bit more complex, you wouldn't want to keep on auto generating, otherwise your computer would have a really hard time. So now we're going to start creating the prefabs necessary to build our level. Can start off by selecting this block that we brought into the scene, and you can see it has a mesh renderer on off, and it has two materials, grass and dirt. All that it needs is a box collider. Whoops. Box collider. It has auto-generated a box collider based on how big it thinks it needs to be, but you've got these little bits of blades of grass on the sides kind of coming out, which have made the box collider a bit bigger than it needs to be. So we want to keep the box collider, only as big as it needs to be. Oh yeah, and I should mention what I'm doing here. Up here in the top right, we can actually change the rotation of our view. We can view on top. We can view below. And right now we're in perspective. But if we click the middle, we can actually go into orthographic, which means that depth, there is no depth factor. It's all perfectly flat, which allows us to do more kind of precise editing with the do some more precise editing with the size of the box collider. So if we change this size to if we just change this to 1 by 1, we can see that it now fits nice and snug with the cube. Now, our block here is a little bit small for our player. You can see how big our player is. So let's make our player a bit smaller. You can see our cube is basically the size of the player. So we might want to make our player, you know, maybe, I don't know, 0.4, about 40% of the size of a block, or yeah, 0.4, that sounds okay. Now if we drag this on top here, we can actually see we can now hit play when it's ready. There we go. Oops. And we can roll our ball on our block. Just like that. Whoop, and it's gone. If we want to, and this is where prefabs come in handy, because if we wanted to build a level, every time we wanted to add a new block, we'd have to drag the block out, you know, add the box collider, resize the box collider, and do a whole lot of work. So to make that easier, we can create prefabs. So if we create a new folder, we can just call this prefabs and open that up, and then select our block in the hierarchy and just drag that down into the prefabs, original prefab. Now our block is a prefab with all of our settings and adjustments and properties. And if we want to add another block with all the changes and all the components that we've added, just like this one, a copy of it, we can just bring it out here. Now we have two blocks and it has the box collider already set up. Now a little trick that for building levels and dragging things in. See, every time I drag a block in, it's going to be in a different location. See, they're all in different places, and every time you place a block, you don't want to have to keep on repositioning it and so on and so forth. I mean, you could take the block and like place it on top of the other block and then move it to where you want it to be. But a little trick is if you create a plane, set the position to 0, 0, 0, and make it, I don't know, 100 by 100. And you can actually hide the mesh so it's not visible. The plane is still there. You can see how big it is. That plane is still there, but what it means is that every time you drag a prefab in, it's going to be locked. It's going to be locked to that plane. So they all come down at the same height. We can delete that one and bring our player down here. Hey, cool. So now we can actually start building our level. Now I could keep, I could actually keep dragging these in, so on and so forth. Or I could actually just select this block and press Control D to duplicate. You can see it made block 2, and we can just actually just drag this out. If we want to make these blocks line up together nicely, we can actually hold down V for vertex snapping, and it will actually snap to a vertex here, and then you click on it and then drag it over to another vertex. And you can snap it to another vertex here. So now we have 2, and I can select both of these, hold down V on the corner, make another one. Maybe I want to start going this way. Vertex snap. Vertex snap. Select those 3. and Vertex Snap. When I'm doing the selection, I'm just holding down Shift while I click. So now we've got like a sort of little path we can go down. Let's adjust our camera into a better position. Something like that. And hit play. Now we can actually move our player along this course. We can actually fall off it. Now the player did actually land here on the ground because of that plane that we put in earlier, but don't worry about that. That's pretty cool. And yeah, so from here we can just keep on adding new blocks. Maybe let's add like a little ramp to go over. What have we got here? We've got a corner to turn. Let's grab these ones, duplicate, bring it over here. We'll move our player back over here. Looks fine on the game. Now let's say I want to make a little hill to go over. First of all, we're just gonna delete these three. Go to our FBX format folder, and we're gonna take this block dirt. Add a box collider, and that's already the right size. And we're going to go to our prefabs and drop in our block of dirt, and then we hold down V and control duplicate, V to vertex snap, and then vertex snap again. Also, another thing I should mention about the beauty of prefabs is that, for instance, any changes that you make in one prefab, you can then overwrite it and it will go and apply those changes to all the prefabs. So let's say I wanted to, let's say just hide the mesh render on this prefab of the grass prefab. I can disable that, select that one that I have selected, and then drag it over the prefab. And now all of them are like that. And if I want to fix that, I can select any of these, re-enable the mesh renderer, and then go back and overwrite it, and then bam. So if you ever want to make a change to one of the objects in your scene and apply it, you don't have to go to every single object and change each and every one of them. You can just change one and then apply those changes to all of the prefabs. Cool. So let's get a little ramp going. Here it is, a little slope. So let's bring that in. Now, unfortunately, there are no triangle colliders. So for this one, we're actually just going to use a mesh collider. And what that's going to do is it's going to generate a collider based on the mesh provided. If we tick convex, then we'll have a mesh that looks like that. So it's following the shape of the mesh rather than a basic kind of cube or sphere or something like that. So let's snap this on. Oh, actually, before we snap it, let's save it as the prefab. So we go slope half, original prefab, and let's vertex snap that on. And we'll need like a little thing to go up there. So let's get a block half. Here we go. Add a box collider. Set the size to 1. Yep, all good. Back to prefab folder. Block half in there. Original prefab. V to snap. And we can take this one, Control D. Now, if we want to rotate this, we can select our rotation. And if we want to get it, you know, I could rotate it, type in 180 degrees, or you can hold down with the, and it's easier if you just, because the pivots are a little bit off. with these models. So if you just select center rather than pivot, we're going to get something where it'll pivot around the center. So it'll rotate around the center rather than the pivot that was set in the editor, which seems to be that corner for some reason. And to get a perfect rotation, we can actually hold down Control, and then it'll actually rotate in little in segments, and then we can get a perfect 180-degree rotation. And we're going to back to our movement tool, hold down V, and then snap here. So now we got like a nice little hill to go over. So let's give that a little test. Up and over. There we go. You'll notice if I just let go, it actually rolls down by itself. There we go. Oh, and I'm off. Great. And I think that one other one that we could make is a half dirt block, which is this one. So let's just add a blocks collider to that. Prefabs. Bring that in. Original prefab. Let's start making a level. Now, to make a level, maybe you could get like a pen and paper, come up with a design that way, or just play around in the editor, throwing things down and kind of playing with it as you go. But I actually have a little level design that I have in mind. So using all of these blocks, I'm going to put that all together. I'll just select all of these and we can delete that. And to keep things sorted a little bit, we can actually, in a hierarchy, we can create an empty object. Let's just call it, blocks. Let's just call it blocks. And it's just a great way of, now this blocks is actually a real object. It actually has a position, rotation, location, but we can all just set that to 0. And that's all fine. And that we're just using that as a parent just to kind of keep everything sorted. So we'll start off by dragging in a block like this, and we'll just bring that under as a child and just start duplicating away and snapping, duplicate and snap. That's the basic layout of the level. And we can, so the idea is that the player will get up to this platform up here, and there will be a cube, a little box, a crate here, and the player will have to push the crate into that little gap here, and then the player will be able to roll across the gap and then make it to the end. So the first step, well, we can give this a little bit of a play, and let's also set up our camera as well, so our camera is in the right position. So for our camera, we actually want our Y rotation to be I think is 230. And then you can see here we have a perspective kind of look. But for this tile set, these assets, they look best, I think, with an orthographic view. So if we select from perspective to orthographic, we can actually get a view like this. And to make it a bit bigger, we can actually scroll up the size. Sorry, scroll down the size to make it bigger. Like that. Maybe have maybe a 3 point. Well, 3 is fine. How about that? 3, and then we can actually drag that. So if you click in the middle, you can actually drag it around. We got something like that. So, whoops. Oh. So because we're looking at this at a, actually it should be, well, it's kind of like a 45-degree angle. Left is not exactly left. Left is kind of left, but sort of to, you know, up a little bit. And then up is sort of up to the right, you know, and that kind of thing. So, but it's something I think you can get used to.